Now, another question that I know will be on a lot of people's lips watching this, David, is, okay, so if these 30 to 40 people all got mutilated and were covered up by this military group, how come we don't know about these people who gone missing? Or why aren't their relatives shown the bodies, or why isn't it exposed?
I asked Tony Dodd the same questions, basically, in one of our evening phone chats. I think it was probably after he told me about the Dolby Forest case of these 7 unfortunate people who were recovered there. And I said to him, what about the relatives? What do they put on the death certificate? Mm-hmm. What does the post-mortem results say? What does the coroner's report say? Right? You know, and then there has to be a funeral. Mm-hmm. And he said, in his opinion, and I think his sources infer that the relatives of the victims are never actually informed that their lost missing person, their loved one, has been recovered. That person is still on the missing lists of the police files, which is terrible in itself, isn't it? I mean, that is terrible. So I think Tony agreed with me when I said that probably the bodies would be removed covertly and sent down to somewhere like Porton Down in Wiltshire, which is a very secret establishment there. Might be there for a while, and then they'll probably ship them to the United States.
Now, you mentioned the Brazilian case, which in terms of photographs is probably the best case on record of a human mutilation, which took place in 1988, we believe, and there's a full police report on that. And is there a post-mortem report with that as well?
Yeah, yes there is.
Right. So now, it's quite a controversial case because certain researchers who have covered animal mutilation in a great deal of depth, such as Linda Moulton Howe, who I interviewed for the Silent Killers film that we did, and we discussed animal mutilation worldwide, and she claims to have spoken to Philip J. Corso, who told her that documents in the Pentagon state categorically that animal mutilation worldwide is an ET UFO phenomenon.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Now, however, I then wanted to discuss this Brazilian case of the mutilated man.
Yeah, with that in mind.
And let's just have a listen. Just to recap, let's just have a listen to Linda's reaction. There was one case, I believe, in Brazil where there was a jaw strip and all the other signs of mutilation.
Oh, you're talking about the photos that Gavard presented in Nevada in the early 90s and enrages me. He had not one shred of evidence beyond the photographs. The photographs were sent to me because he never had the courtesy to even contact me, to even ask me what I thought of the photographs, but used my name in the presentation as this is like the animal mutilations that Linda Moulton Howe has investigated. Untrue and absolutely unprofessional, and the wrong way to present anything to an audience when he has done no research of what I call research. And let me give you the backstory. So somebody tells me that this man from Brazil has done this and sends me those photographs. And I take the photographs to a medical doctor. I did not set up anything. I just put the photos down in front of a medical doctor and said, if you had a victim in front of you like this, what would you conclude? Without missing a beat, the medical doctor said, oh, I saw a lot of that in Vietnam. I said, what do you mean? He said, that's what Agent Orange does to human tissue or any tissue. I said, well, what do you mean Agent Orange does this? He said, in Vietnam, we always had, because he worked in a medvac team in Vietnam, he said, we were always spraying Agent Orange, and we were always seeing animals and humans that had these deep penetration holes surrounded by the black carbon ring because we're a carbon life form, and Agent Orange always leaves black circles around penetrating wounds in flesh because we're a carbon-based life form, and that's what Agent Orange does.
She's saying it's Agent Orange. Now, do you have any comments? What's your view on it?
Well, first time she said that to me, she was quite agitated, really. She said she'd spoken to an ex-army medical officer who was in Vietnam, showed her the picture. She showed him she claims, the pictures of the Brazilian man body.
Which, just to interrupt there, David, had the rectal core, jaw strip, seemed to have organs removed, because the chest was sunken right in.
He had his ears removed, and the internal organs into his brain were missing, both eyes. He had 2 little holes in his skull, which we don't know what happened there.
Right.
And he had muscle taken from his arm, small holes, and muscle extracted, and in his thigh was an oval hole, and his scrotum had been removed, as you say, an anal core. There was something on his feet as well, and his toes, but just forget about that, I can't remember.
Right.
No blood again, no blood.
Right. So, you then, Agent Orange is what she...
Yes, well, I was flabbergasted, to be honest. And this army medic chap had said to her, "Oh yes, we've seen that before, that's Agent Orange," because they were using it in Vietnam against the Vietnamese and the Viet Cong or whatever. And I think some poor members of the public, you know, like killed with napalm as they were burnt by Agent Orange. But I mean, I went on the internet, did a search for Agent Orange, and it's mainly chemical skin burns, which aren't deep. And certainly Agent Orange does not make surgical incisions of depth into the body and remove the organs. So for her, with all her experience and knowledge, to come out with that, to me, was quite a shock. Who was using Agent Orange on civilian populations in Brazil? I mean, were the Americans... I mean, that in itself is a serious accusation to make by the American government, who will be flinging the stuff about in Brazil.
And we also have the statement from Professor Tony Fremont, because you were in communication with him in the late 1990s and early 2000s, and you showed him the photographs of the Brazilian man.
Yes. So Tony Dodd came here into this very, where we are now, conservatory, our house, with Professor Fremont, who's a human pathologist, who does pathology work for British police in UK crime, murder cases. And we went through a lot of animal pictures. A lot of them were Linda's. He brought one of Linda's books with him, Tony, because at that time I didn't have that many photographs of my own, because I hadn't been doing this research that long. And we went through all those, and then Tony opened the envelope and produced the 6 or 7 photographs of this Brazilian man, put them on the table in front of Tony Fremont, who was quite shocked, and he paused, and then he made some remark out loud, but almost to himself, like, "I don't see how we could do this." So he was talking about his profession when he said the royal we, you know, we to do it.
So a professor of pathology has said that, and you've got that on tape, so we can hopefully have a listen to that.
Yes, if we can find the tape.
You recorded that meeting was recorded on audio.
Yes, with Tony's permission. You know, Tony Fremont.
Yes. In late 2009, I visited Wales on at least 2 occasions in attempts to interview Derek Goff, but getting him to agree to speak initially was difficult. He was reluctant to talk because in 1997 he suffered serious threats and a suspicious fire shortly after informing the police about being in possession of the information. The information included colour copies of 11 photographs of 2 mutilated corpses which the police took from him. Derek decided to pass the story to somebody else because Goff himself was in fear of his life. He passed the photographs and information to retired police officer and UFO researcher Tony Dodd. This can be verified by reading Tony Dodd's book, Alien Investigator. Derek Goff is listed in the acknowledgements at the front of Tony's book. On page 257, Tony describes the Derek Goff story, although not referring to him by name. Another trusted contact, with whom I have had several conversations, has given me details of a quick response team set up by Margaret Thatcher's government, and as a result of her cooperation with President Reagan. The team, again made up of elite forces, was on permanent standby to attend the sites of any UFO landing or crash. carrying bleepers which would summon them any time they were needed. Helicopters were permanently ready to ferry them to the scene of the crash. Their role was to seal the site from the public, if necessary evacuating any civilians living within the sealed perimeter. They set up 2 cordons, a tight one around the actual UFO and a wider one to isolate the whole area within several hundred yards. They also attended sites of animal and human mutilations, which shocked and horrified them. As my contact said, they could accept the horror of war, but they were not accustomed to seeing such brutal wounds on animals and humans in peacetime. It was the secrecy surrounding the whole of their operation that made him feel it was his duty to alert the public to what was going on. Unfortunately, the first contact he made was with an inexperienced young UFO enthusiast, the book is referring to Derek Goff here, who secretly recorded their conversation. This young man played the tape to other UFO researchers and talked about it at their meetings. He was very naive because within days a mysterious fire broke out in his office at home and all his files were burned. He realized he was in over his head and contacted me. He sounded terrified. His wife was so frightened she moved out and left him. Luckily, they are now back together again. But he made it clear that he wanted nothing more to do with this investigation and passed it over to me. The soldier had also decided it was a mistake to talk, and he was very wary of me when I first contacted him. I had to send him photostats of my driving license and proof that I had been in the police before he would agree to talk to me. He told me he had discussed me with his colleagues from the quick response team and they had agreed to him helping me, as long as it was very discreet. They all shared his feeling that the public were being kept in the dark. They attended crash scenes across Europe, including Spain and Germany. They were not supposed to make any recording of what they saw, but he has photographs of some of the mutilations, and also a piece of debris he picked up at the scene of a crash. At one site in Spain there were several human bodies spread around the site of the crash, all naked and without body hair, and all mutilated by having limbs etc. cut off. Although Tony does not mention it in his book, he was in possession of 11 photographs given to him by Derek Goff of 2 mutilated corpses recovered by the military team on Brecon Beacon, we think around 1990. So we think that that Tony probably didn't put it all in his book.
No, it was quite sensitive. He was still a very loyal servant of the Crown, Tony, serving police officers for 25 years, and I think he found difficulties often with the information he had and his loyalty to his past employers, the government.
But a few cases didn't appear in his book, right. in Tony Dodd's book, but he told you about them.
He confided to me that in North Yorkshire, in Dalby Forest, which is part of the North Yorkshire National Park, and it's a huge area of forest, sort of north of Pickering, just south of Farlingdale's early warning station, so you're sort of south of Whitby, so it's a massive area. And this area was quite renowned for animal mutilations, and Tony had quite a few reported to him by a guy that worked for the Forestry Commission, who he calls in his book Cedar. And there's everything from deer, badgers, sheep, fox even, often in quite a small area, on one occasion blocking a road, where the witnesses reported to Tony that the police with some army personnel had blocked the road off until they removed all the animals.
This is all in Tony's book?
Yes, it was in his book, but all this is in Dalby Forest. So I think it's quite significant that over several years there's been a history of mutilated dead animals found in the Dalby Forest area and around Ravensglass and Ravenscar and South Whitby in that area. So he went on to tell me, coming back to the human mutilations, that he knew, possibly from the same military guy, that 7 human beings had been found in the same field in a period over about 3 weeks. So I don't think they all appeared 7 together. This was 7 different bodies, and I don't know whether they were male or female, found in this same particular field, and they had the classic mutilation injuries, tongue out, jaw strips, eyes out.
And interestingly, hair removed.
Yes, and that was a very strange thing I'd never come across, and I don't know whether Tony had. But there was all the bodies were totally lacking any hair. You know, the hair follicles somehow had been stripped and all the hair taken out. So it wasn't just the hair of the head or beards or the pubic hair. It was all over. And
that is similar to what Derek Goff described.
Right.
With the Brecon Beacon case.
Goodness me, that's interesting.
Yeah. Now, yeah, go on, David.
You just wanted to say that the authorities had some sort of cover story cobbled together in case something leaked to the media, and Tony thought it was quite humorous in a way. The idea was that somebody had been dumping mannequin dummies into the field. So
now there's a couple of other cases which the military guy possibly didn't mention to Goff,
right,
that we think he gave to Tony. One of them involved a Staffordshire case.
Yes, Tony mentioned, apart from the 7 bodies up in Dalby Forest in Yorkshire, there was an 8-year-old girl found in Staffordshire. Now, I don't think it said to me where in Staffordshire it was, or what year it was, or what state her body was in, but he implied that her injuries were the usual classic modus operandi of, the usual jaw strip, organs removed and all the rest of it, and being very clean and bloodless again.
Right. Like
there was no blood recorded, part of the information went with the 7 bodies in Dalby Forest.
Right.
Now this girl, being Staffordshire, I would say it was even money, it would be in the Cannock Chase area,
right,
because there has been quite a lot of UFO activity around Cannock Chase.
Right. And another case involving a 4x4 vehicle, this time back on Brecon Beacons.
Oh right, yes. Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yes, this was Brecon Beacons again, which is interesting, isn't it? And there was a family in a 4x4 vehicle. I don't know what the model was. If he told me he didn't, I can't remember. And they went missing for a period of time, and I think some searches were set up to go and find them. They found the vehicle first of all, with no occupants, parked up some remote spot, and one of the things that they observed was that all the seats had been ripped out in a very unusual fashion. What exactly he means by that, we don't know. But then a day or two later they found the family. It was mum and dad and a boy and a girl, ages, if he did tell me I can't remember, and they were laid out in a row on the grass or by the roadside, with again the classic mutilation injuries.